Hey, welcome to the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, Zack Gugenheim. If you're like, where's John or where's JR? He's in Disney and he left me in cold Pennsylvania to run the show. But I'm happy to be here with you guys tonight. And I have a esteemed panel with me here tonight. First, our dear friend, Jeff McMichael. Big Jeff. Jeff, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing good. And I haven't totally retired from podcasting, but I'm helping coach my high school's tennis, boys tennis team, varsity tennis team. And then the head football coach for our high school asked me to be the treasurer. Thought that sounded like a smart move, but more work than I thought, but still fun to be part of the football program, trying to grow the revenue. You guys would be shocked how in Georgia, or maybe you wouldn't be shocked, just the salaries of some of these coaches that are making through the booster clubs. And I mean, it's crazy down here in Georgia. It's a hotbed.
Yeah. I was gonna say Georgia high school Georgia football. You're gonna be counting some money, making sure that
Yeah.
everybody's above board there. So that's a big commitment. And our other guest tonight, Blue Wolverine, is ecstatic for this $4.99 super chat. Thank you, Blue Wolverine. Sam from College Football with Sam here on the show. Sam, how you doing tonight?
I am doing fantastic. It's been a great past few days, both with the channel and other things. I took about a week and a half break, and that's the last break of the year. It's going to be daily college football from here until however long the gasoline lasts. So I'm great.
There you go. There you go. Well, we're excited to talk some football with you. Uh, Obviously, our viewers know Jeff, and I think a lot of our viewers know you too, Sam. So I think people are excited. I am Brad, and you're not. Says no Jr. But good guests. I agree. I think we're gonna have a fun night. We've got 4 topics. This is our around the Big Ten type show. Kind of shamelessly stealing that from Bill and Doug and what they do with Around the Shoe. We love them. Obviously, we enjoy Doug and Bill and what they do. So why not do a version of it around the Big Ten? We have 4 topics. We're going to be talking top freshmen and transfers, who makes the playoffs, and what we think about coaches. As some of you know, my favorite topic. Philip knows. Hi, Phil. We see you in the chat. Illinois to the Final Four. Don't know about that. But before we get to those other things, we're going to start with a topic that JR and I covered on the last episode, which is over-unders. Let me adjust the graphic so you can see my lovely face here. But we're going to talk about over-unders here. And people on the show know my opinion, but we're going to start, Sam, with you. We have the over-unders here released by FanDuel for about a week ago. As you look at these over-unders, who do you think is most likely to hit the over on their projected win total, and who do you think is most likely to hit the under?
Over would be Iowa for sure. I'm very confident in that. As for the under, I'm going to probably throw a curveball at most people and say Penn State.
Ooh, say more. We'll talk about Iowa in a minute, but say more about Penn State.
I think that when you go from a senior-laden roster where you have Vega Ione, their guard, is still projected as a first-round guard, and you have just so much potential NFL talent exiting the program and a lot of transfers exiting to whether it's Tennessee to follow Jim Knowles or Virginia Tech to follow James Franklin or these different places. And then you're bringing in most of last year's Iowa State team and a few larger D tackles from other programs that were, good or okay last year, but not elite. You're going to have a roster downgrade, and that will be more important than having an easier schedule, especially when said easier schedule still has USC, Michigan, Washington on the schedule, and you still have teams like Wisconsin, Minnesota, or Northwestern. You only need to lose 3 of those games to hit the under.
Yeah, I think that's a sneaky good pick. And I think to your point, I think everybody looks at that schedule and says, "Oh, there's 10 wins easy on that schedule." You only got to lose one. You only got to lose one more of those, and I think you're right on there. That's a good under. A lot of people are thinking.
Yeah, there's some.
Jeff, how about you? Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I was just going to say to support what Sam says on that. I took a note when thinking about this. I didn't list Penn State, but I did think, it's basically a lot of Iowa State players playing at Penn State. So it's Iowa State players. Think about it, playing in the Big Ten. That's a lot harder, right? Now I do like Rocco Beck, the experienced quarterback, and he is a tough kid and all that. I just don't think he's a great passer or anything, but he's a competitor. So I do like that. But Campbell's going to have to do a great job to hit that over because, again, that talent level is less than Penn State had last year, but you could argue under a better, probably, head coach than James Franklin. And I know Sam agrees with that because I've heard that on his podcast. So I can see the argument for this for sure, Sam.
There you go. Well, Jeff, how about you? We'll get back to Iowa because I think Iowa's a big talking point here. But Jeff, why don't you hit us with your over and under real quick?
So I'm going to do it quick because my number one, and this is good. None of us talk to each other. And by the way, I entered all these games this morning and went through, and I legitimately went through every game of these teams. And I had Iowa coming out 9-3. That's a little bit of a stretch, but the over is under 7.5 for them. So I had Iowa as my number one team for the most likely to hit the over.
All right. So you've got Iowa as your number one. What about your under?
And I can give reasons later for Iowa on my thinking. Frankly, for the under, I really struggled. And I think as I thought about why am I having a hard time, I think because the Big Ten's non-conference scheduling is so easy. There's so many teams that are going to have 3 wins, and then they don't have to have many Big Ten teams to hit their overs. So I would have a tendency to think that the Big Ten is going to make the overs. So I struggled here. But ultimately, even though their schedule aligns pretty well, I came up with this Wisconsin. And much to the chagrin, my brother and my 3 nephews all graduated from Wisconsin. I've been to 15 games there through the years, just as like family reunion. So, but I have Wisconsin going 6-6, hitting the under 6.5 is the over under. I can go into more later, Zach, but I have Wisconsin.
Yeah. It's still a tough schedule, despite the fact that it's not as tough as last year. But Sam, I see you nodding your head. I'm curious. Jump in. What do you think about Wisconsin there?
Well, what if Notre Dame beats them by 40 and then they get demoralized and then they go to Penn State and Penn State beats them by 20, but it feels like 30. The team quits. He gets fired over the bye and they finish 3-9. I just think the odds of that are high enough where you have to bake that into the projection.
Yeah.
So I like it.
Yeah. There's that. I wonder if there's a little foreshadowing in there too for a future topic there. I think that's a very reasonable thought, right? That Notre Dame game it may not be 1 loss. It might be 8 losses or 9 losses. So I think that's a really good point. With Iowa, I also picked Iowa as my over. Now there's another one that I think's out there. And I think statistically, this is more about where they've been the past several years is Minnesota. They are perennially underrated and they have hit the over, I think 4 out of the last 5 years under PJ Fleck. So I think just from a sheer, just historical perspective over the past 4 or 5 years, Minnesota's under 5 they're 5.5 is their number. I'm going to pick over just because, but I think Iowa is the one where I'm like, I think like their floor is 8-4. And I think they could spring an upset or two and get to 10-2 or 11-1. Now the quarterback's a real big question. But I really think that 7.5, I'm actually surprised it's that low for Iowa. I'm curious I know Jeff, you looked at the schedule, but as you looked at it, and Sam, as you looked at it, what is like? Are there anything out there that would make you second guess Iowa over 7.5?
I mean, that's a good question. I guess I would just say one of the reasons why I like them. I thought they were very unlucky last year, frankly.
Yes.
I'm an Indiana grad and a fan, but a Ohio State. Those that know me on this, Ohio State longtime football fan, well before I went to Indiana even. But I have two teams, and frankly, Iowa should have beat Indiana. If Gronowski did not get hurt in that second half, I think Iowa would have beat Indiana. Iowa really almost beat Oregon at home as well. I mean,
They should have too. They
Yeah.
made that very not to interject, but those special teams gaffes in that game that they never have made in like the previous 5 years. Two of them, or not, the safety and then the random fumble, and those are two examples of bad fundamental soundness. And they just happened to come against a top 5 team.
Yeah. And so I just, I think so that gets into the Zach, why I think that is, because Iowa is, and us football nerds know statistically they were way better than they were portrayed in their perception. I mean, SEC fans, they consistently, Iowa plays tough against SEC teams. They don't always win those games, but they could see how well, and SEC fans just forget about it. I think SEC fans are just so influenced by the lack of good quarterback play out of Iowa that they just assume they're a bunch of dorks. If you would look at the number of people they put in the NFL, I mean, I think they're like 26 most NFL players on NFL rosters. And so there's just this national perception of Iowa that's under who they really are. And I think that leads to the lower, because remember, Vegas is setting it based on trying to get, 50% of people to vote above and below for the most part, right? So I think that feeds into it all. Consistency of coaching staff, Kirk Ferentz, and Ferentz is actually recruiting better than he ever has, if you look at those stats. So that's why I like Iowa a lot. We know how tough they are to beat at home. So those are the reasons I like them.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other thoughts on that, Sam?
I can't really find a reason to be against picking them over 7.5. Maybe if the number were 8.5, there could be some reasons, but they should get better at running back with LJ Phillips transferring in. They've done a good job on the offensive line, and it's Lester's third year. They finally fielded a top 50 efficiency offense last year, and they were top 10 on defense and special teams. And they've had losing records in one-score games the previous few seasons, and now they have a schedule that has that tough at Michigan, Ohio State at home, at Washington stretch. But outside of that, they're not going to play anyone with a comparable roster to them. And they should be good enough to possibly beat at least one of those teams. Not for sure, but even if they lose all three, you're 1.5 games above the win total. And I don't think they're going to lose to Nebraska at home or lose to Illinois or Minnesota, because they have possibly the best corner duo in the Big Ten, and it's up there nationally. Special teams will be good, and I just trust their trench play. And honestly, with how Gronowski improved throughout the year and how underrated he was, I would say, I kind of trust them at quarterback to do well enough there to not have someone who can lose them games.
Yeah. And just interject one other thing. Iowa has lost to Iowa State fairly frequently. They really shouldn't this year, right? So that should take out that as a possibility, most likely. And it's also at home. So 3-0 in the non-conference. And then it's a matter of, what they need 5 wins. They need to go 5-4 then in the Big Ten to exceed 7.5. That sounds very reasonable, right? For a well-coached Iowa team to me.
Yeah. 5-4 with their last 6 games being the old Big Ten West. I think they're in good shape.
High flying.
Let me I'll get to comments in a minute, but want to get your opinion on one more thing. So I had two teams written down for my under. One was actually Penn State. So Sam, you stole the one that I thought about sharing, which is great because it forces me to expose myself for my second one. And I want to know if you think I'm crazy. I have Ohio State under 9.5. Because if you look at the schedule, like there are 6 games on that schedule that I'm like, they could legitimately lose 4 away games at Iowa, at Texas, at USC, and at Indiana. And then they play Michigan and Oregon at home. Am I crazy to think that they finish 9-3 or worse?
I'll let you answer first because I have some detailed thoughts about this that I want to think through.
Yeah. So no, not crazy because of one thing. At Texas, week 2. So, are we guaranteed that Texas is everything they say they are? It's interesting with Texas last year. At first, people were like, oh, they're complete fraud based on mid-year. But then if you kept on watching them and kept on watching Arch Manning, by the end, they were pretty damn good. They just have a Georgia problem. It's a bad matchup for them. So then everyone thinks they're way overrated. So I think that's overdone. But I think, Zach, they could go 9-3 as long as they play Texas really tough. Everything. I think Ohio State could still end up in the playoffs at 9-3. And if they play those teams tough, they should, damn it. Because this is our problem we have. Teams are being punished too much for losing really tough, non-conference games or tough games. As long as it's right there and it was a play or two away, you shouldn't. I'm not saying it should be looked at as 100% like a win, but it's that loss should be with an asterisk on it. That's the way we should evaluate it. Because if we want these games to continue, if we don't do that, all these teams are going to say, why am I bothering playing Texas when it's going to keep me out of the playoffs? And that I really believe that's why Notre Dame and USC really aren't playing. I think it's smart by them as far as making the playoffs. Unfortunately for college football, a great rivalry like that is not happening because it's smart for them to drop it. Indiana, it drove me nuts when they dropped Virginia. Freaking Virginia. I know they had a good year last year, but Virginia's not that good. But it's smart if you want to make the playoffs. Unfortunately, it looks weak by Cignetti and everything. But so anyway, I'll let Sam maybe, it is a tough schedule, but I am saying 10-2 for them, by the way, Zach, but 9-3 is not crazy.
I also have 10-2 because I made the decision that with Kirby Smart, Ryan Day, and then a little bit of a level above that with Cignetti, I'm just giving them absolute benefit of the doubt. So I have Indiana going undefeated, and that shocked some people. I'm probably a bit lower on Ohio State's portal class than most people, but I still have them at 10-2 because I think they're one of the best coach teams, and I have Georgia doing really well too. I don't think you're crazy, though, because this is a schedule that reminds me a lot of Georgia in 2024, and that schedule nearly broke what was a very loaded NFL roster. Like they ended the year injured, disheveled, banged up. Georgia Tech was up 17-0 on them at half, and that roster is not what Michigan's is going to be this year. It's probably closer to what Iowa's on the road is going to be this year. And look, I mean, if Indiana does a good job reloading, Oregon maximizes their talent, Texas, as Jeff said, continues to trend up. And look, I think Ohio State will improve on the offensive line at least a little bit. And I think their offense, with Sayan having a year of experience under his belt, is definitely going to improve. But last year in big games, Texas, Miami, and Indiana, they scored 12.7 points per game. Penn State in 2023, whose offense was notorious for being awful, scored like 10.5 in their big games. So that offense, if it, say, stagnates for whatever reason, and we're talking about probably worst case scenario for Ohio State here, but that's more likely to happen than in prior years due to the schedule, I guess, sort of functioning as a pressure cooker. If certain things don't go right, the schedule could exacerbate those flaws if they're not taken care of. So while I disagree with it, I don't think it's crazy. It's just bold.
That I appreciate that idea of a pressure cooker, like exacerbating things, particularly with the offense, because I think you're right. And maybe I think that's my biggest concern is where did Ohio State struggle? It was when they faced the those superior offensive and defensive lines, right? You saw it against Indiana, you saw it against Miami. I think to a degree you saw it against Texas. Although that Texas game is a little wonky because they're just kind of feeling each other out. So
Yeah.
but the Miami and Indiana games, I thought there's just concerns and there's just a lot of question marks for me. Like, how do you replace Downs? How do you replace Styles? How do you like? I know that they have guys, but I have a hard time believing that Little is going to come in and be Caleb Downs.
Yeah.
So,
One thing, just Ohio State, and I know Sam wrote about this, their offensive line was not the best last year, but fairly young because they're returning most of them. Another thing no one talks about enough, not just Julian Sain being first-year starter. I think enough people kind of talk about that. I don't think they do enough. But the fact that Bo Jackson's your starting running back as a freshman, pass blocking for a true freshman running back is extremely difficult. So that's one of the reasons all that with the line, first year starting quarterback, a first year running back trying to figure out how to pick up blitzes, and that's complicated. So it is why I think they will be better. Sain will be used to throwing under pressure. Bo Jackson will know how to pick up blitzes better, and the line will be better. I don't know if it'll be great. So Zach, your concerns on defense, yes, their defense is not going to be as good. There's no way, because that defense was awesome last year. But that offense is going to be better, even though maybe not as good of receiver depth. But everyone else, including that, learning how to block blitzers and all that, will be better this year. And even the second string running back was also Bryce West, right? So people don't talk about the blocking factor of running backs enough. It's always running, right?
yeah.
And
That's a really good point. I'm gonna start moving this, but as a Buckeye fan, I hope you guys are right. So this is one of the I don't really care about getting right or not. But before I get to the comments here, though, I do want to remind you guys, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel and like this video. And as we do that, let me show you some of our super chats. I want to thank Brett Beaver for the $4.99. He says, crazy how NIL destroyed Michigan State football. I think Michigan State's an easy over. I can't see them not winning 2 games against Rutgers, UCLA, Northwestern, Wisconsin. And then Ryan Willie, Evil Badger, Wisconsin won't lose by 40 at Lambeau. All right. That's his shot back across the bow on us. But real quick, what do you guys think about Michigan State? Just that thought from Brett.
Oh boy. Well, as someone who, despite being a Michigan fan, has probably a proven bias towards MSU because I always pick their overs and then fail miserably. The 3.5 win total kind of has me scared that some of the comments I've listened to on the Cover 3 podcast about Fitzgerald not really evolving are true. And the intelligent people know this because whether we like it or not, I think people still interpret MSU as at least a respected football program. And to have a 3.5 win total with 2 MAC games and then the 4 games he said is kind of, I don't know, that's kind of an indictment more than anything else, don't you think?
Yeah, that's actually not a bad point. That's a really good point.
Yeah, and I want to touch Michigan State because of all the new coaches, 4 new coaches this year of the 18 teams, and just all the coaches in general. The one I really have no idea is Fitzgerald. He did do a great job at Northwestern for many years, but his last 3 years there were not good. And it's a whole different world out there. And I know he spent time in his sabbatical, like visiting programs to learn that, but I have no idea what to expect from him. He could do really well, it wouldn't surprise me, and he could just flame out and be terrible, and it wouldn't surprise me. And I can't say that about the other coaches. I have some pretty strong feelings one way or another about all these other 3 new coaches. So I don't know on Michigan State. It's going to be fun to see.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll get to that in a moment. There's a lot of other comments, but I'm going to keep us moving. I want to talk about top freshman players and top transfers. There's a lot of buzz with spring ball going on, a lot of 30-second clips of that guy's going to be awesome. And of course, it's the spring. Everybody's great. Everybody's the best player ever. But I'm curious, and Jeff, I'll start with you. If you had to pick one top freshman and one top transfer to make an impact this fall, who would they be?
I hate to name one because I kind of feel the one is, I don't want to say obvious, but I mean, Chris Henry Jr., Ohio State, with all the transfers they had at wide receiver, they have an experienced offensive line coming back, although still needs to develop more, an experienced quarterback in Julian Sand at this point, a coach who knows how to be creative and getting guys open. And by the way, people are going to be double teaming Jeremiah Smith. It just means there's going to be a lot of opportunity for other people. But people probably get tired of hearing about Ohio State. I also have, I'm just going to throw them out quick, Carter Meadows, edge for Michigan, top 10 recruit. And then Michigan strong at defensive line development. I know they have a new staff, but Winningham and his staff at Utah were good at offensive and defensive lines as well. And then just an under-radar guy I'm going to throw out there, Tyson Terry for Nebraska, defensive lineman, real big, 6'3", 310 pounds. I mentioned him because Nebraska sucked on the defensive line last year. It was a major problem. Sorry, Nebraska fans, but the fact that this guy's
Jeff, stop sugarcoating it. Tell us what you really think.
I know. But he's got this guy. I mean, Nebraska fans, I want this to be exciting, right? I mean, you got a dude coming in. I mean, he's got like Caden McDonald type size here, right? Wow. I mean, we all know. I'm not saying he's going to be Caden McDonald, but he's got that kind of size. And so he's kind of an under the radar top freshman. I think that could be pretty good. Then my top transfer, maybe a little boring. We have Sam on and we have that guy excited about Michigan, but John Henry Daly, the stats he had at Utah, and this is big boy football, right? They're Power 4, playing against real good competition, 11.5 sacks, 7.5 tackles for loss. And elite pass rushers can have a big impact. So when you talk about, the biggest impact, a defensive end can offer you that. That's why I list him as number 1. And then just throw up real quickly, my number 2 would be Josh Hoover, quarterback for Indiana, transfer from TCU, just because Cignetti, 2 straight quarterbacks, 2 years in a row, bam, first year in the system, just played their best quarterback, in their careers. That bodes well for Josh Hoover having a major, major impact at Indiana.
Yeah. Yeah, I think those are good. Those are good picks, Jeff. Sam, over to you. Top freshman, top transfer.
I would probably have to side with Ohio State and Michigan. I know that Oregon has signed, I think, the 2 best classes over the past 2 cycles in terms of average rank per recruit, but they're so deep this year that I don't know if they're going to have anyone emerge. So I'd probably go with Legend Bay for Ohio State or Savion Hyder for Michigan. One of those 2 at likely running back. For transfer, it probably would be mostly Indiana. Jeff stole the John Henry Daly one, which is just brilliant. I mean, that guy's a dude. And Josh Hoover too. I thought of Hoover. But for Indiana, it would probably be Nick Marsh at receiver. Their 3 edges they brought in from the portal I all liked. Toby Osunsanmi, Chidi Obiizor, Joshua Burnham. And then A.J. Harris had a first-round NFL draft pick grade entering this year because he was phenomenal in 2024. And then he really fell off as that whole Penn State team did last year and got benched. I would like him to have a major reemergence with probably, I would say, the best staff. No, not probably. Let me be bold. Confidently the best staff in America.
Hmm. Yeah, those are good picks, and I think if we can confidently say anything, most of the time the best transfer is going to belong to Indiana. They know how to identify talent better than anybody else in the country. So, um, but yeah, I think those are all really good picks. I also had Josh Hoover. I feel like that's kind of the easy one in terms of the transfers. My freshman, and we talked about it a week ago. So if you've listened a week ago, you know my thoughts on it. But Luke Wafel at USC,
Ooh.
I I feel like if USC is gonna be a player in the playoffs, you've got to have better defensive line play. And the buzz out of camp, again, it's buzz out of camp in the spring, but there's a lot of good buzz about him. Highly rated guy, high motor, yeah, really good size and speed. And I think he could be a game wrecker, especially you start to get in that mid part of the season where they get the big games. I think he could really have a huge impact.
Yeah, and USC needs better defensive line play. That's been lacked clearly. Their 2 years in the Big Ten, that defensive line has not been ready for prime time, not been ready for the Big Ten, right? So that has to be shored up. So that's why I like that pick. If he turns out, he could have a major impact for them.
Yeah. You could even talk about like Caden Dixon Wyatt for them on offense because receiver depth's a question. Like they brought in a really good recruiting class and enough bodies and enough high caliber bodies where just looking at probability, they'll probably have a few freshmen that emerge and can play competent Big Ten football at the worst. So I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Well, I think we've hit a lot of guys to look to really look for in this freshman and the transfers. And we're only going to see more as more clips come out, but at least we have at least a good primer. So we're going to take just a quick break, and then we'll be back with our playoff thoughts on the playoffs. That was not supposed to play music. This is what happens when JR is at Disney, and I'm still trying to figure out how to do the things on StreamYard. So, but we are so glad that you're with us. If you're on podcast, I apologize, but it's okay. We'll figure it out. Playoffs, because that's all we care about now, right? Playoffs, as Jim Mora once famously said. Uh, Very different context. How many Big Ten teams are going to make the playoff, and why? Sam, I'll go to you. What do you got? What do you think? How many teams? Who do you think the teams are going to be, and why?
Oh, wow. Okay, so I'm gonna go with 5 here. Why? The SEC is moving to 9 conference games,
Mm-hmm.
and the SEC continues to slowly, I would say, slide back at the top. Though this year they should be better at the top than they were last year. Just in general, they are continuing to compress, and I still don't think their top teams are as good as the Big Tens. The ACC is only going to produce 1. The Big 12 could produce 2, but that depends on certain things happening. I like Indiana, Oregon, and Ohio State to make it. I think that Indiana and Oregon just are going to have different rosters than most, like they did last year, and they don't quite have an Ohio State caliber schedule that could give them 3 losses in most scenarios. And I think Indiana has the best staff, Oregon is the best roster. Ohio State is the toughest schedule on top of having a great roster and an elite staff. So I think what Jeff said earlier will hold. If anyone goes 9-3 and gets in, it's them. So that's helpful. And then I like Iowa to go 10-2 and beat one of those teams. That'll get them in. And with Michigan, I think that their schedule is close enough to an Ohio State caliber where if they go 9-3, they could get in, and certainly they'll get in if they go 10-2.
So you've got Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State, Iowa, Michigan.
Yes, tentatively.
Yeah. And I think so. We've had a number of folks chime in. Well, and it's funny, I was just on the OHIO pod with Eric Boggs and those boys over there, and they have a lot of questions, some very legitimate and some Ohio State driven, which is, I think, very fair. But I'm curious, what are the things that you think Whittingham's going to get right to put them in that position to get to 10-2? Because there's a lot of skepticism about them going into next year.
Oh, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we could make jokes for an hour about every wrong thing Sharon Moore did at Michigan. And the fact that you're bringing in like a staff that commanded a top 10 efficiency offense at Utah, and then they only lost to BYU and Texas Tech, who went a combined 24-4. And Tech was this team that, I mean, I watched that Oregon game, and they're putting Oregon's O-line, which has close to the size of Miami, though they weren't as good, but that was one of the better O-lines, and they just put them in a blender, snap after snap after snap, and they were on the field for 45 minutes. So I have a lot of respect for Whittingham, even before my channel got somewhat big and before I was as well researched as I was. I recognized him as a good coach. I have some concerns myself. That's why I have him at 9-3 right now. I can't pick him to beat any of the big three, but they're going to get offensive line right. This is Michigan's best receiver room in eons.
Yes.
It's their most talented quarterback with an actual staff and not a collection of homeless people. And the secondary looks to improve with Smith Snowden coming in and them retaining some key guys there. So, yeah, I like them. I love their future. I guess that's an awkward way of ending it.
No, I think I would agree. Like I've said that this might be the most potentially explosive Michigan offense, I think maybe since the Lloyd Carr years. Like you look at the receivers, the running back room. I mean, that the Manningham, Adrian Arrington, Mike Hart years, I'm thinking. Because like
even better than the Tate Forcier.
Do we really have a Tate Forcier reference in 2026? What just happened?
Yeah, and then
I'm old. I'm 58, people, so work with me here.
Oh, I've watched some of the Rich Rod highlights, so I understood that, thankfully. But they even have the potential like first round tackle that Michigan had with like Jake Long. Like Andrew Sprague has all the potential and measurables in the world too, and he finally has a good staff as well to benefit from.
Yeah. I think those are really good thoughts, Sam. Jeff, as you think about the playoffs, where are you the same with Sam, and where do you differ?
Yeah, and because I laid out the exact records, that leads you to some strong opinions. So I have 4 Big Ten teams in. I look at Notre Dame as a for sure 5th team, and then that leaves 7 spots left for everyone else. So I factor that in here. And so, Sam, I agree. Oregon, I have them 11-1 and in. Indiana 10-2 and in. Indiana, by the way, losing to Ohio State at home. Revenge factor, motivation is huge here. People don't talk about it enough. Indiana had all the motivation last year against Ohio State. Ohio State had a bunch of things going against them, including a very emotional win at Michigan. And Indiana had a nothing game against Purdue. So, and then the staff.
That's fair.
Yeah, the staff turnover. And then I did have Penn State in because I had them going 10-2, but I agree they easily could be 9-3 and under that 9.5. So that one I don't feel real strong about. So those were my 4. But Sam, where I'm aligned with Sam, I have Michigan 9-3. And Sam, if you're right, and 9-3 could get in, like let's say they lose to Oklahoma, but it's like a field goal game, right? Or It's got to be that. They can't lose by 2 touchdowns to Oklahoma at home, go 9-3 and make it. So how you lose is very important, and it should be. So I could see that for Sam. And then for Iowa, I have them 9-3 and not 10-2. So at 9-3, I can't see Iowa making it like because they don't play a tough non-conference team. So, and nor should they probably make it. So, I have 4, but if Sam's right, Michigan potentially 9-3, if they look good in those losses, could happen, right?
So you're for Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State.
Penn State, yeah.
Okay.
And the Penn State one, I do not feel great about. Their schedule is just so ridiculously easy. Just looking at their all the way down to they have 5. People don't talk about this enough. With a 9-game conference schedule, you'll have 5 home games some year and 4 games home games the other. So they only have 4 away Big Ten games in addition to their cake non-conference. So it's going to really come down to those 4 away games, I think, at Michigan, at Washington. Those aren't easy, but they could lose both of those, and they beat USC at home, and they're 10-2, right? So the path to 10-2 is that's why their over/under is 9.5. I mean, despite all these, despite an Iowa State roster that's well coached, but that's a long-winded answer to say I don't feel great about saying Penn State's going to make it and be able to beat the 10-2.
Yeah, I think a game for Penn State that's really intriguing, and this is actually, I think, coming off of your prediction, Sam, for Northwestern, but that game at Northwestern is really, really tricky because it's Northwestern's first game in Ryan Field. You've got Chip Kelly calling that offense. I don't know what to make of Northwestern this year, but just the fact that it's the first game in that stadium, there's all the expectations in the world for Penn State. That's, to me, that will tell me a lot of what I think we need to know about Penn State, that game at Northwestern.
Yeah, I would agree with that, especially when with Campbell, he wins a few games or a game sometimes that you don't expect, and then sometimes he'll lose a game or 2 that you don't expect him to. So there's a lot of variation there.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. I'll throw in mine. I'm a little bit kind of in between you guys with my playoff. I have 4, but with an asterisk with a potential 5th. And the fifth one, that if I'm going to stick with Ohio State 9-3, that's my potential 5th is Ohio State. I have Indiana, Oregon, and Iowa firmly in. And then I have USC.
Ooh.
And I feel like it, honestly, I feel like that Ohio State USC game in LA to me is kind of the swing game for me. I have USC winning that game right now, but it's a little trepidatious because the reason is not because of roster. It's because of location and travel. So I'm a little concerned about that game, but if Lincoln Riley's going to make noise, this is the year he's got to do it, in my opinion. You've got Gary Patterson now on staff, and you've got Jaden Mayava in his 3rd year. You've got some dynamic players on those lines now. The question is it enough? And so I'm kind of making a bold prediction that USC is going to make it in. And then if there's an opportunity for a 9-3 team, I agree. I think Ohio State gets in. But yeah, any thoughts on that, guys, before we move on?
So I have USC at 9-3, although they burned me so many times. Last year, as Zach, I would choose, the top, what was it? The top 3 games. I can't remember now. I think I was 1-4 on USC games against the spread and choosing, including Sam. I fell into oh yeah, they're going to beat Illinois, after Illinois got their doors knocked out. And I didn't think that meant that was the team that Illinois was, as bad as they were at Indiana. I didn't think that, but I believed in USC. It wasn't a dig at and they just let me down, and it happened over and over. They had the good game against Michigan, which made me feel good about them again. So they burned me, Zach, last year, but I still have them 9-3, just the way it worked out. But I see a path for that. And in Iowa, I have 9-3 and close to getting in. So to me, and then just on Michigan, Bryce Underwood, he's going to make a jump in year 2. It's a matter of how big. I was like, for Nebraska, I was expecting Dylan Raiola to make a big jump. And I don't know if it's because his offensive line just wasn't very good. He made only a little jump last year, and that pretty much killed Nebraska's hopes. So Michigan needs him to make a big jump, Sam. I'm not saying huge, but it can't be little jump. You know what I mean, for them to meet expectations next year.
Oh, I completely agree with that. I don't think he'll become, like, I'm not biased Michigan fan who thinks he'll become a top 5 quarterback, but I think top 15, top 10 is what it'll be with that coaching staff and what they were able to do with Dan Pierre and Beard Ficklin, the backup. It'll be, of course, in a different league, tougher schedule, even factoring in the upgrade in talent. But I completely agree. I mean, if he just takes a small step, you're probably looking at 8-4. It could even be worse. As for my thoughts on what you said, Zach, there's so much variance with USC where, as of now, I'm probably a bit lower on them than most, but I myself have said that that's one team where after spring, I wouldn't be shocked if my opinion were radically different. You have a DC who is respected as a coach, invented the 4-2-5 mint defense that is practiced by a lot of people now. But he also hasn't been a DC in over a decade, hasn't been a head coach in about half a decade. You have an OC who's the head coach as well, who's an absolute, genius and wizard, but then has that play against Notre Dame where it's like wide receiver pass out of the backfield, fumbles it, all momentum lost, and what could have been a win is I will never forgive them for burning me there, because watching that game and picking USC, I thought, okay, yeah, they could do this. And then they let Notre Dame give them a shot, and then they could just never end up taking it. It was so frustrating. The Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana games, for sure, you got to circle. But even a game against Washington or at Penn State or at Wisconsin before that Ohio State game, it's a schedule where if they kept Notre Dame, it would be a tougher schedule than Ohio State's, just due to location, travel, where the games are played at. So if USC makes the playoffs, they're definitely a national title contender. If they make it, they'll be a threat to win it all. And they do have that ceiling, I think.
Yeah, and they have to solve the East Coast multiple time zone travel issue. They first 2 years they have not played well, so they've got at Rutgers, even at Rutgers, don't get off to a slow start. You never know. At Penn State, at Wisconsin, like Sam said, at Indiana, and then they do get at. So 4 of their games, 4 of their 5 Big Ten road games are traveling way east. They only have at UCLA as the, backyard game, so to speak. So I think that's probably why I had 9-3. I had a couple of those losses traveling. 2 of the 4 East Coast games there are losses for USC is what I had.
Fun fact: Lincoln Riley at USC has never covered the spread outside of the state of California. Ever.
Go.
Really?
Yes. Including at Nebraska last year. Nebraska lost, but covered, and they should have won.
Ding. All those that you say, Sam, are all those that I took probably USC last year. I definitely took them against Nebraska. I'm telling you. And USC fans, I don't dislike USC. They just burned me is all last year.
Yep.
Not that I'm bitter.
Yep. And 4 games outside the state of California. Rutgers at Penn State, at Wisconsin, at Indiana. They will probably be favored in 3 of those. Probably just against Indiana, they would not be favored. But yeah,
Depends
but
on how
still,
Penn State season's going. Depends how. If,
yeah,
you know, yeah.
Yeah, if Penn State loses at Northwestern the week before, then yeah, USC will definitely be a favorite. But if Penn State's clobbering everybody, then yeah, you're right. Well, so it sounds like though we're all in agreement that 4 or 5, the Big Ten's going to be arguably the top conference in college football again, which we love here on this show. We love hearing that the SEC might be taking another slide. We like that. We got to fight that SEC bias, but no more talk about SEC bias. JR is not here. He's in Disney. We're going to talk about my favorite topic, firing coaches, and who's going to do well too. Let's wrap up the show here. Who's getting fired first, and which first-year coach are you most excited about? Think they'll do the best job? Think, Jeff, I'm going to go to you on this first.
All right. So I'm going to name them first and not go into detail just to make sure I don't go long. But yeah, first fire, it feels too easy. Loxley for Maryland. I kind of know Sam's other candidate. I won't say. I'll be interested to hear, but I know from previous podcasts I've heard. And then first year head coach, there's only 4 candidates. There's Winningham at Michigan, Matt Campbell, Penn State, Chesney at UCLA, Fitzgerald. I actually went with Matt Campbell only because I had them going 10-2 if they don't go that. But Rocco Becht, if he thrives, he is a tough competitor. If he hits the ground running, Campbell did bring most of his staff there, easy schedule, and they should be 5-0 before facing USC at home. That USC game, we mentioned it. They're bad on the road, but USC will be the more talented, clearly team. But if they can get off to that 6-0 start, and I don't think they need to necessarily go 10-2 to be looked at as a great first year for Matt Campbell. If they go 9-3, that meets so I'm going with Matt Campbell there.
That's a good pick.
Yeah, for me, it would probably be Loxley is the most likely to be fired, just given win total and the fact that I think he's the worst coach in the conference. And they need to wildly overperform their win total for him to not get fired. If we're going first in chronological order, for now, I'd have it with Fickle. I kind of in the winter bought into the fact that Penn State and Notre Dame will house them, and then they would be demoralized enough where Michigan State would come in there and beat them, and then during the bye he'd get canned. I probably in the spring we'll have them going bowling, just looking at the win total and talking with some people, but those I think are the 2 candidates, but I'd side with Loxley if I had to choose between them. Best first year head coach, if you're going by the biggest improvement from the year prior to this year, I think it will be Bob Chesney at UCLA. If you're just going by best overall coach, I think it would be Kyle Whittingham at Michigan.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, Sam, because over at the OHIO pod last night, we were talking about Kyle Whittingham a bit and asking about, does he get the rivalry? And, it's a fun thing to talk about, but I think the thing we're more impressed with, and again, this is a bunch of Ohio State people talking about this, is we think he's going to really reset the foundation, not just from a football perspective, but from an ethical perspective, a moral perspective. Like, he's a good dude, and he's a great football coach. And my opinion has changed. So I'm very excited that Fitz is coming back to college football and to the Big Ten. And I low key, it's more feel than anything else. Not sources, because clearly the sources are going very opposite with Fitzgerald than my feel. I because of that, I was like, oh, Fitzgerald, I'm excited about him, but I really do think it's Whittingham. And again, I agree with your assessment, not in terms of maybe not in terms of the jump of win total, but overall improvement of the program. I mean, I think you joked about like I don't know who was on that staff last year, but they weren't qualified. And now you bring in a legitimate Hall of Fame caliber coach to coach the Michigan Wolverines. Listen, I don't care how well he gets the rivalry yet. He got the Holy War. So he knows rivalry. And he'll learn. Like I don't think Ohio State fans we can play that up too much. But I think Whittingham is I think Whittingham is a really good pick there. And I agree with you. I think Campbell can be good too, but I just think what Whittingham has to do and what he can do with the type of coach and type of man he is, that's good. And I'm with you guys with Loxley. I think Jeff knows my affinity for firing Loxley. I think I fired him about 78 times on this show. So I just don't. I had a year's soft spot for him because we talked with Larry over at IMS Radio, Maryland Sports, and they love what he's done as a man, like and how he came in after DJ Durkin, really rallied that community, which is great. But at some point, you have to perform. You have to perform on the football field. My only hesitation is that they do have a lot of young talent, and like Zion Ely comes in. He was another freshman I was thinking about picking. They have Malik Washington. They have some really, really good young players in that sophomore class. But man, that's what I thought all of September last year. And then they just face planted every single week after that. And I'm like, like, are they even going to get out of September? Like they play Franklin and Virginia Tech week 3. They play UCLA week 4.
I mean, to lose to Michigan State last year is not a good thing, no matter how you slice it. And then to let that Michigan team, who was planning to defend their midfield logo because they got in their head that they were incapable of beating Ohio State, to let them beat you by 30 is not that's not a good sign either. I mean, what you said.
Yeah, the other thing with all this is who else could get fired other than Fickell and Loxley? If you look at Nebraska, I mean, they just re-upped Rule. I mean, the worst thing that happened for Nebraska was Franklin getting fired mid-year when Nebraska was still looking pretty good. Then they re-signed Rule, and then after that, it looked like a horrible decision. Well, they're not going to fire him now unless it's a total disaster. And then Schiano, everyone knows NIL, they don't have the NIL budget. He's fighting with one hand behind his back. I don't think he'll get fired because if you fired him too, who are you going to replace that's better than him given their NIL situation? And then Purdue, Barry Odom, even if they have a terrible year, I don't know if they're going to fire him in year 2 after year 2. So who's left to fire
I have a bold candidate that just came to mind. What if USC loses in upset fashion to Rutgers or plays them close, and then Oregon sets their house on fire when they come? And then after that, you get Washington at home, close loss, Penn State on the road, close loss, and then it just all falls apart. I think the schedule's set up enough where if the roster really isn't put together, that could be a very rough year. But it's bold because I think they're good enough to win those games, even if they're having a difficult time.
You know, Sam, why that's a possibility too? Because of their new DC hire could be the guy to take over, right? With head coaching experience. if you did that last year with Riley, who are you going to name as head coach meantime? Basically, you'd be looking at starting over, right? But Patterson literally could take over, and who knows, be the man for 3 or 4 years there and get it done. So that's an interesting one.
That is very much the Penn State, like the Penn State blueprint, right? You come in with high expectations, and then either you go 2-4 or 3-3 in your first 6 games.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really smart thought, because that's how you get fired and not be like a bottom feeder like Loxley has been, or Luke Fickell has been the past couple of years. You have high expectations and you just blow it those first 6 games.
And not only that, if you think of who else are we going to get at a school like USC, there's a lot of people you could get that would be great coaches that would come in. That's the difference with Wisconsin. Do they have, and I know they're talking, they're going to spend more NIL and devote more, but really, are they? So if you fire Fickell, are you sure you're going to get someone better for sure, you know? So I think that's why he's still there in some ways. They're a little unsure if they can get someone better.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, guys, this has been real fun. Sam, tell everybody where they can find you and follow you at.
You can find me at College Football with Sam. We are on, I can finally say this after years of trying, so proud moment. YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We're on all those platforms. You can find us there at College Football with Sam. It's the same logo, the same face. Sometimes we have guests on. You should check it out, and I'll try to have you guys on at the same time, or one of you guys on as guests, because I like having a rotating cast of guests when I can.
That'd be fun. That'd be fun. We'd love to do that for sure. And we really appreciate you coming on here. And
Thank
Brad,
you.
It says, good show, guys. That's a credit to you two being on tonight. Appreciate you. And Jeff, where can we find your stuff? I know you're still writing, at least. So where?
No, I'm not. Actually, I'm not writing. You're
not writing.
I'm more Xing or tweeting or whatever we're calling that now.
All right. So where can we find you?
I'm mostly responding to Sam's stuff and setting him straight is what I'm mostly. You know, it's been so long, I almost forgot my X, even what I think at Big Jeff's FT Ball. So I'm Big Jeff. So at Big Jeff's FT Ball. So yeah, definitely spending more time on high school coaching and everything until my son graduates. Probably will remain that, but staying active still. So I appreciate being on here, and pleasure being on with Sam for sure. It's like meeting, you know, like a famous person or something. I don't know. It's like it's awesome.
Well, I'm honored, and hopefully this will be a memory if I'm able to, and hopefully when I'm able to hit 6 figures or 7 with the subscriber count. That'd be cool.
There you go.
No doubt.
Well, yeah.
Nice meeting you too.
Yeah, it's great meeting you. And for those of you in the chat, those of you watching, thanks for being here tonight. We really appreciate you guys. Again, make sure to listen to us on the podcast network, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as here on YouTube. Like, subscribe. We really appreciate you guys. Thanks for listening to the Big Ten Huddle. We'll be back on Sunday Night Live, where JR can tell us all about how the Magic Kingdom was. Until then, we'll see you on Sunday.